Can you take us through the Jazz's vitals, please?
Yes, I can. We went long there, but that's okay. Key free agents: Jordan Clarkson has a player option. Kelly Olynyk has a partial guarantee, which probably by the time you hear this, we'll have a decision on. It's June 28th. Talen Horton-Tucker also has a player option. No extension eligible candidates of note. The Jazz acquired John Collins and used up a significant chunk of their cap space, but they can still get to over $25 million if they keep Olynyk. And Talen Horton-Tucker opts in, and they renounce Clarkson, which Clarkson's going to be an interesting figure to talk about for this team.
Assuming he opts out, by the way. We haven't gotten news that he's
we don't know.
Yeah.
Some trade exceptions here. Rudy Gobert, $9.6 million. Bojan Bogdanovic. This is funny. You go through all this and you're like, wow, the Jazz had all these guys. Alexander Walker, $5 million. Jared Vanderbilt, $4.4 million.
Which they do, by the way, for anyone who we haven't mentioned this, you need to renounce your traded player exceptions, like to create the necessary, like if you want your max amount of cap space, TPEs count against your cap when you're under it. For
Can't hold on to all of those. Yeah. And I mean, that's an interesting question, probably not for this pod, but like which ones are worth actually holding on to and for which teams. So Dan, their biggest needs, I mean, you know, especially if Horton-Tucker is not back, which I'm not sure, seems unlikely. We can discuss him. Need a lead guard, right? Need a point guard, someone to run the offense. Anything else there?
No, they need wings. Like I want to segue into we really don't need to spend a ton of time on them because I think they've kind of proven that they might not be ultra aggressive in free agency now that they're going to look to take on the salary dumps. And like John Collins was unique in that you didn't need pick equity to get him because you want to rebuild. Like if John Collins has a good year, that is someone who might net you first round equity down the road. And if not, it certainly can be like worthwhile salary filler as part of a bigger trade. But like, I want to get into more of like Larry Markkinen can play the three. He spent most of his time playing alongside a 4 and a 5 last year. He did the same thing in Cleveland. But I still would have questions about this team defensively. Maybe having Walker Kessler and Taylor Hendricks sort of, nukes those concerns a little bit. But I want to get into the Collins fit. Is it like there are no wings to go after on them? Like if you wanted to go after Jeremy Grant, now it's like, well, you have John Collins and Lowry. Like that's not workable with Walker Kessler. So there just aren't like the lower end or mid end 2-3s that would come off the bench or like a bigger 2. Like even if you could get Chris Middleton, he no longer makes sense. I mean, you could play super big, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to make that play. And so I gravitate towards, can they take a flyer on a Trey Jones that's restricted? I would just put Ayo Dosunmu on this team because he gives a damn about defense, but that's not really a primary playmaker type. The big question would be, they can get there. Like they can force their way there. If you could get Fred VanVleet, would you do it?
And I'm using basically all of that $25 million I can clear to get him.
You would need to create more. It's Talen Horton-Tucker opted out, or we actually had to waive. Maybe you had to waive Kelly Olynyk, or you I actually think would OKC just take Kelly Olynyk into cap space after that? I mean, like the Pacers might take Kelly Olynyk into cap space. You could definitely move Kelly Olynyk at his full guarantee.
Yeah, I think I'd be well. The number would matter. Anything up above $25 million a year for VanVleet, which I think is probably going to get. Makes me a little nervous, but I mean, it is a position of need, and he is the type of guy that like, I think he does more good than harm as far as like how he would interact with someone like Markkinen. Like you don't want to, minimize Markkinen's role to any extent. I don't think that's an issue because VanVleet has played with all NBA forwards before and that hasn't been a problem. Yeah, I'm okay with that. It doesn't bowl me over. But I think, certainly Utah, I guess it goes into a bigger question. Utah just did take on a bad contract for some assets. So like, are they in a position where we're adding, a mid to late prime expensive point guard to this group, right? Because that would kind of run counter to what they've done so far. Because look, this rebuild started a year ago, and it just went way better than anyone expected. So maybe that changes your plans, but I'm not sure the best use of their assets is adding a guy that, I don't know about the timeline fit, but just isn't really in keeping with what they've done transactionally to this point and, under Danny Ainge, right? Does that make sense? Like it's more of a philosophical issue as opposed to like an on-court fit thing.
Do you know what would be more Danny Ainge at this point? This is about to aggravate a lot of people, and I'm not advocating for it. It would be more Danny Ainge to have acquired John Collins and have Taylor Hendricks, and now turns around and moves Larry Markkinen at the absolute apex of his value.
Right. Which they will not do. Right. Like I can't. I mean, that would blow me
He
away.
had too good of a year. I don't even think that. I think teams would not even give up enough to justify it because they think he would be due for sort of return to solid ground role. And so I just don't think there's value in doing it for Utah, actually. But I'm saying to me, it would be more likely they trade Lauri Markkanen than they sign or throw other money at Fred VanVleet or Jeremy Grant or Chris Middleton.
I think I agree with that. And that just goes to like, it's so easy to forget where Utah is in its rebuild trajectory, right? It's like these are early days. I love Trey Jones there, though. I have to say that was a name you mentioned, but I'm a big fan of that one because that's not gonna cost you Van Vliet money. He's not as good as Van Vliet, but he's like a steward, right? He's like a young game manager, which I don't hate for Utah.
I think they could be a team. Like, do you take a shot on Matisse Thybulle? I don't know what it takes to get him out of Portland. Just like, let's just bring like a really disruptive wing defender off the bench here. You could play. I mean, like you have a pathway now to play 5-out lineups with Markkanen and Hendricks and Collins, like sort of mix and match this. So you could surround him with enough shooting where it works. That's like the only young, like Cam Reddish is not for this team, but like young, disruptive. I thought about Bruce Brown a little bit for this team, but I alluded to that before. I don't think he gives you enough positional flexibility to guard up like around the 3 and the 4. And just, is it enough playmaking? It just, I mean, maybe for 2 years and whatever, like he's only 26 or 27. So he's not super old, but like those are the two names that kind of stood out. It's like if you were to invest in a defense first type of wingish player, maybe
it would be fascinating to see if, and Utah's in a position to just try this. Like, can Bruce Brown just be our starting point guard and actually play? You know what I mean? Like, because especially if you bring Clarkson back, for example, those two work fine together because Clarkson's going to be on the ball all the time anyway, or at least he lightens that load. I think it's kind of, I mean, the downside's pretty significant because their offense might just not work. But I think it'd be fun to see if Brown could play like, you know, I mean, he came in the league as a point guard and then he's gone through all these different iterations. It'd be interesting to see if he could just do that full time again.
Honestly, you might just be like, you could flip him at the deadline. If it was a 2-year inflated salary, there'd be a team like Bruce Brown at 17 million. Yeah, sure. Why not? We'll do this. What did you think of? So they trade Rudy Gay in a 2nd-round pick for John Collins, the final 3 years and like 75-ish million, whatever it is left on his deal. What did you think of that trade? What do you think about his fit?
I love it for Utah, even if like, and I don't even really care that much about the fit, just because it's such a low price to get a guy that I don't know. It could just be that I've overvalued him forever, or if I've expected there to be some upside after, you know, the heights that he hit, you know, 2-3 years ago. I think there's a great chance that, you know, he just, maybe the finger's finally all the way better and he can hit shots again, maybe getting out of Atlanta, the change of scenery angle. It's just like a great buy low, you know, and you got the cap space to do it. It didn't cost you anything, you know, just Rudy Gay in a second. Like that's crazy. That's like, I can't believe if we, even at the trade deadline, if that's the package you were told was going to ultimately get John Collins, I would have said like, man, did he go 0 for 1,000, you know, for a full season? Is that what happened? Like, because
what's funny is, remember the reports where Danny Ainge wanted a 1st-round pick to take on John Collins, and I thought that was blasphemous. He ended up being closer than I was to John Collins. Value.
Yeah, no, we've struggled for a long time to evaluate John Collins' worth. I will just say that for me, he's worth a heck of a lot more than a $6 million veteran contract in a second. I think I got to believe that if Utah just did this to rehabilitate and flip an asset, that the Jazz are going to come out ahead. And if he fits and plays well, then you maybe just keep him. I don't know. But I think the paths to success are many for Utah on this.
Yeah, I loved it. And it's just, I can't bring myself to care about Lauri. I mean, I did kind of lampoon it before he was going in, like his first season in Cleveland. Like, oh, they're going to play him at the 3. That's not going to work. Mm-hmm. It can work. We've seen it now work. The theory of it works. It certainly works on offense. It can be a little difficult against certain matchups on defense, but he's proven mobile enough to hold up. And you have Walker Kessler behind you now. I can't bring myself to care. If there's any concern, it's that will just playing John Collins with Walker Kessler threaten to marginalize him the way that Atlanta ended up doing, because you can't ever use him as the primary rim runner. But Utah doesn't have like the backup 5 right now. Like, you can use John Collins in that role very easily, and you're going to surround him with better if you don't think it's better spacing, it's certainly more volume from a 3-point perspective where there will be room for him to actually roll.
And I know we hit our timer, but frame it this way. Like, would you care at all about, well, how's Rudy Gay going to fit with Kessler and Markkanen and like, no, of course not. And that's what it's an imperfect argument because it dismisses like the idea of opportunity cost. What could they have done if not Collins with that $25 million? But it's like, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. Who cares? You wouldn't have like Rudy Gay was on the bench all year. You just swapped out Rudy Gay for John Collins. Like, so if it doesn't work, no big loss. Like I don't care.
It's 2 years, and all of a sudden he's like a really awesome trade asset as an expiring contract if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, awesome move.